Welcome to Grow Your Own with Pace, practical actions for climate and the environment. And this week we're dealing with pests, because probably you've got some young seedlings by now. Therefore I want to deal with this early and tackle it head on. What are the common pests that you might have to deal with, and how do you deal with them? So I've turned over this board. This is a walking board I use on the vegetable plot, and underneath you'll see there's a few slugs, and these are the slugs that are going to cause the problem. They're the small ones, not those great big fat ones that you sometimes find. They tend to eat leaves, dead leaves and things, but this white one here particularly, then that's one that's going to cause problems, and there's a little black one as well. Those are the two main ones that cause problems. These other ones as well will have a go at your vegetables. So we have to deal with these, because otherwise they're going to have your vegetables and you're not. Especially when they're young like this. Just think, one munch from this chap and a seedling's gone. So how do we deal with them? I mean, there's lots of different ideas put about, and I've tried many over the years. And lots of people end up resorting to slug pellets. So a little bit about slug pellets first. There are two types. And the one that people often go for has got metaldehyde, which is a poison, as the active ingredient. And you shouldn't use that really, because it will cause problems, not just to the slugs, because it will kill them of course, but it will also kill hedgehogs or song thrushes, anything that likes eating slugs or snails, then, or even pets as well. If pets eat metaldehyde, then they're not going to be very well at all. However, there is another type of slug pellet, this type here, which contains a different ingredient. It contains ferric phosphate, and a ferric phosphate affects slugs. It dries up their slime, so it does kill them, so we have to face up to that fact. It does kill them, but it won't kill anything else. It won't kill song thrushes or hedgehogs or anything like that. It's approved by the Soil Association for organic growing. And in fact I've did some trials on this particular ferric phosphate slug killer on farms, and I know it's as effective as the metaldehyde one. There is a myth that the ferric phosphate doesn't work, but it's a myth. The problem is that this is a bit more expensive than the metaldehyde slug pellet. So get the right one. Ferric phosphate, 1% ferric phosphate. It'll say it on the label. You'll have to hunt for it, but find it. Ferric phosphate. So where I need to use slug pellets, I would use this one and just sprinkle a few in amongst my seedlings. It doesn't need very many, because the pellets actually attract the slugs. So I say I only use slug pellets if I need to use them, and I've got other things I would do first. For example, these boards, I turn them over every so often, and those slugs that are on there, I'll pop them into a bucket. In they go. Like that. Get them away, just go all the way along the board, pick those up into a bucket, and then I'll pop those on the compost heap. And then they can do some good in the compost heap, rather than doing damage here. The other thing is, get used to which of your vegetables are prone to slug damage. The young ones of course, but then particularly things like lettuce, brassicas, young beetroot, things like that. And then those are the ones you've got to keep your eye on. Right, there they go. Them on the compost heap, do some good there. So these are some young parsnip seedlings. They've just come up and they're pretty vulnerable at the moment. Not to slugs in their case, because slugs don't seem to like them, but pigeons do. So some birds are a particular problem in the garden, and pigeons are the worst. I've never known anywhere like Manningtree for pigeons. There's just so many of them. So we have to deal with that. I mean, if the pigeons just disturb the ground, never mind eating the seedlings at this point, then that's a problem. So that's why they're covered. That's why we've got this wire cages on. So there's some wire there which enables us to stick it in the ground and hold it in the ground. So it's just otherwise just netting like that. So yeah, the other plants which are very susceptible to pigeons are brassicas, all the brassica family, cabbages, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, all that lot. Pigeons love them, so if you don't cover those, you'll lose them to pigeons. I mean, the other more dramatic way of protecting against pigeons is in a cage. I mean, this is the cage here, and here's the netting that's going to go on the cage a little bit later on, so that'll go all the way around and all the way over the top of this cage to prevent the pigeons getting at any brassicas. So moving on to some of the other pests, the insect pests. Some of those can be a problem. So here we've got some nice broad beans. Actually, there's a weevil been chomping a leaf there, look, and they'll take a lot of these little cuts out of the leaf. So that insect is around already, but it's not going to cause us a problem, so I'm not worried about that at all, even if lots of the leaves have got a little bit of damage like that. But the thing that will cause a problem on here will be black fly. Everybody's heard of black fly, the black aphid, and they can absolutely smother your broad beans, or indeed some other of the beans as well. So the main way that I'm dealing with that is I've planted these in the autumn. So these broad beans are going to be ready before the black fly are around. The black fly won't be around until till May, and by the end of May these broad beans will be ready to pick. So that's the main thing I'm doing here, is I'm avoiding the problem by planting my broad beans in the autumn. If I do get a few black fly on in May, then rather than using an insecticide or pyrethrum or something like that, then this is just a bottle with a bit of washing up liquid in it. So water and washing up liquid are dilute, and I can just spray that on the aphids if they occur. Little black aphids appearing there, and they don't like that at all. It affects their skin on the outside of the aphid, and they dry up and drop off then. So yeah, that's a useful little trick, but the best one is to avoid the problem. Plant them in the autumn. So if you do get a lot of aphids on, then you can nip the whole top of the shoot out. They're always on the top of the shoot, so take the whole top of the shoot out. I won't do it. There are several other types of aphids, of course. Greenfly on your roses is one everybody will know about. But on your vegetables, then mealy aphid is the other one. And it's a pest of brassicas. It grows on the underside of cabbage leaves and forms big patches there. But again, that little spray with soap water, if you get them early, spray them with soap water, that should deal with them. Now this is where we planted the carrots. You remember us planting those? Sowed the seed here, and we mentioned then that there is a pest called carrot fly, which is a big problem. You can, obviously we said we can choose varieties which are resistant to carrot fly, but then we can also cover it with a thin mesh like this, or a fleece, and it'll stay on there for the whole time, and that will stop the carrot fly getting and their little grubs making those holes in our carrots. So if we want to grow cabbages or any of the brassicas, all these brassicas have so many pests, but cabbage white butterflies are the key problem later on. So again, this mesh will keep that off, so all the brassicas will need to be inside a cage or under some covers, otherwise they'll just get hammered with caterpillars. If you don't have them in a cage, then you'll just have to be prepared to pick them off, but it can be many hundreds of them. However, we're given an opposable thumb, so it's a task for us humans. Now another little insect pest we can get is the flea beetle. Not around every year, but several years you'll get it. Particularly likes brassica seedlings and things like beetroot seed. When they're very young, these are beetroot seedlings here, I'm growing them inside to stop them getting the flea beetle. Flea beetles are very, very small, and as their name implies, they hop around, so all you'll see is little hopping things. But you'll see that they eat little holes in the leaves, and they'll kill the plant because of that. So a few plants I'd grow inside for that reason, to avoid the flea beetle. Now mice can be a problem, not always, but particularly with peas and beans. So I always cover peas and beans, again with this type of mesh. You see it's pegged down here. If mice can if they get the scent for peas, these peas are just coming up. There's one there, look, just emerging. So let's go down there. There it is, and in there, there's the pea, look. And so mice are rather partial to pea sprouts or bean sprouts, just as we are. So that's why I cover those until they've got themselves established. Once they're established, then it's fine. But at this stage, the mouse would go down and nip that pea off, and of course it would then kill the plant. So so that's why I peg this down to stop any mice, or just deter them really. There'll be quite a lot of mice in the garden here. Wild mice these are, not house mice. Now of course rabbits can be a problem. Not everywhere, but where they are a problem, they just eat everything. So you have to fence them out. So you'd use some netting like this, and you'd sink it into the ground at right angles like that. So if a rabbit tried to dig, it would dig into the netting. So those are some of the common pests and how to deal with them. So in summary, avoid the pest if you can. Choose resistant varieties. Fence them out if you can. Think about timing, when you plant things or grow young things under cover or in a greenhouse until they've got strong, and then plant them out. It's a last resort to use any chemicals, even the slug pellets I talked about. Partly because we want to encourage as many insect predators in the garden as we can. Things like ladybirds, of course, but there are other things like hoverflies, which are perhaps more important, and lacewings. They need flowers, really, so they need pollen and nectar. So make sure you've got a variety of flowers around as well, and places for those insect predators to survive. Now, here I've just made what's called a bug hotel, really. You can see how it's done, just some canes cut into a piece of old drain pipe there. So you can string that up, and what will go in there is things like the lacewings. They love going in places like that, and also beetles. Beetles are important predators in the garden, and you probably get some bees in there as well. So they go into the canes there and use the canes. So that's one way. Another way would be to drill holes in wood that you're not too bothered about. Here on the edge of my compost heap, then I can make some holes in there. Just drill them through like that, and various insect predators will use those holes in which to hide and also to raise their young. Yeah, so there are a few pests, but don't let them put you off. You can deal with them, I'm sure. And remember also, don't expect every one of your vegetables to be absolutely perfect. You will have the odd hole in this or a patch on that, but don't worry about that. You can chop that away. It doesn't matter if it's a misshapen carrot or parsnip or whatever. You can still, they just taste just as good anyway. So don't be put off by a few pests, just deal with them.